Welcome back to the Regenerative Renegade podcast. This is a podcast for people that are involved in the regenerative movement in some way, shape, or form and sharing their story, their challenges, and their hope for the future. Today, I have an old friend, Carrie Balkcom, with us. Carrie is a tireless worker in this space. She amazes me with her energy, her persistence, her resiliency, and her pleasant attitude along the way.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for joining us, Carrie.
Thank you.
I'll share Carrie's bio. Carrie is the Executive Director of the American Grassfed Association. AGA, it's called, is the national multi-species entity organized to protect and promote grass-fed, amen, and pasture-based farmers and ranchers. AGA is the leader in pasture-based production and the oldest. Does that mean the first two, Carrie? Are you the oldest and first grass-fed certification? The first
Oldest and
grass-fed
first.
certification. So she's a pioneer and a renegade in the United States. AGA certifies ruminants, pork, and dairy. Carrie grew up on a Florida cattle ranch and has stayed connected to the agriculture and livestock industry. She has spoken often, presented often, coordinated numerous regional and national conferences, and is well known in agriculture, culinary, and sustainable, and I would say policy agricultural circles. AGA and Carrie has been advocating for a change to the policy of allowing a change to this policy that allows offshore beef to be labeled product of the USA. And through the hard work of a lot of folks, including AGA, this egregious mislabeling was added to an executive order signed by President Biden on July 9th, 2021. She is a force and a friend in the industry. Welcome, Carrie.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. And it's always nice to hear kind words about what I do, but it's all because of people like you that allow me to do what I do. So kudos to
OINT. We do this together, Carrie.
Okay,
we do this together.
Well,
and
I had to get a plug.
I still will be as humble as you want to be. I still will be amazed by your work, whether you like it or not.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on to.
So can you share some of the journey that took you from growing up on a Florida cattle ranch to the work that you're doing today and why this has been so important to you? But I'd love to hear the journey.
Well, the journey is that I was of the generation that told their children, I think you were part of that too, to move away from the farm. Definitely. There would never be a future for us. So I moved as far away from the farm as I could. And that was for about 20 years or so. And then I found my way back. It was different times in the economy in United States and stuff. And through an interesting circuitous route, I found myself, because of my interest in food and agriculture and working with slow food, the consumer side of things, at a meeting in 2003, the first meeting of the grass-fed movement. And it was when the United States government was going to allow grass-fed to be called grass-fed and put a label on it when you could feed 20% grain, administer antibiotics and hormones and confine them and use that label. So I showed up at that meeting, and it was not the way that I was taught to raise animals. And from generations of families in my family who had raised cattle without those things, without confinement, and all of a sudden realizing that the government was going to allow that label to be put on products piqued my interest. And I stayed from that meeting, and I've been here ever since. So that was the root.
2003, right?
Yep.
There was a meeting. They're going to allow 20% of the diet to be grain and still be called grass-fed beef. So 20% of the lifetime diet of that animal.
Yep. And confined.
And fed. And it'd still be called grass-fed. That's interesting. That was the same year Thousand Hills was founded. But so you're at that meeting. It didn't seem to make sense to you. So then what happened?
No. we started working with USDA, with AMS and FSIS, and going to a lot of meetings in Washington. And the president then of AGA, a producer in Missouri, and some other people, we spent a lot of time with those folks, and they were not going to give us everything we asked for, which is what we have now in our own standards. So USDA said we're going to only say what the animal has eaten, not where it's eaten or how it's been raised or anything else. It's just going to be, that's what we're going to use as the grass-fed label. So this small working group said, can we start our own standards? And they said, well, of course, if they meet or exceed ours, and we went, well, that's easy. So we started in 2007. We had written our standards, which are followed to this day. And we started certifying in 2007 after the USDA said that they were still allow confinement, still antibiotics and hormones. And the other thing that they said in the AMS standards, the USDA standards, was if the animal has been fed grain, just make a note of it. You did tell them to take them out of the program. So AGA started a third-party certified program in 2007 for beef. That was our beef bison. And then we added lamb and goat. And since that time, we've added grass-fed dairy. We've added pastured pork and pastured poultry. And so it's been a busy 20-some years of getting these things done. We're recognized by the USDA. We're recognized as a gold standard in some situations because of the way our standards are written. One of the things we did want to do with our standards is make them something that producers could do and make it accessible for all producers, whether they're small, large, whatever, rather than just having a bunch of scientists or lay people or legal people write the standards. Producers actually wrote our standards. So that's where we are today. And
So
anyway.
just to go back on what was going to, so did you say that they were going to allow antibiotics and hormones and fed in a feedlot and certain percentage of diet could be grain and that was all going to be allowed?
Yeah, they took out the feeding of grain, but they left the caveat in the standard that said, if you do feed grain, keep a record of it. But it did not tell you to take it out of take them out of the program.
Wow.
So that's when we started our own third-party certified program. And we've been certifying ranches and farmers since then and adding the other standards in.
And, our brand is certified AGA. And I tell the customers that I talk to when I'm pitching them or talking to them is like, I have yet to find a third-party standard that is more rigorous or strict than the AGA protocol, American Grassfed Association protocol.
The other thing that separates us, because there are other grass-fed certifications out there, is we're USA only. We don't allow any certification outside the United States. And it sets us apart because those animals have to be from American family farms and farmers and from birth to harvest. So that really sets us apart in the consumer's mind, is that we want to support local. We want to support USA only. And so it's been a long journey, but we're still hanging in there, and we're growing daily and consumer acceptance and retail acceptance. So that's where we are now.
So the reason why, I'm going to guess here, but I think we're on the same page. The reason why those standards exist and they're so rigorous within AGA is based on the basic premise that ruminants and or animals on the land managed properly is the best way to rebuild our soil and the food system. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
From your perspective?
From my perspective and from a lot of people's perspective and soil scientist perspective and nutritionist perspective on how the animal is raised and it's not fed anything it's not supposed to be eating. It's fed a diet of forages, which is what ruminants were designed to eat. And so it's a better way to raise the animals. It's a better way to maintain your soils and soil health. So we're going to stick with that one forever. So
Yeah.
we'll keep
Well,
going on.
and it makes sense because we're mimicking nature, and we're just really the rules are in place, the protocols in place to most accurately mimic nature on what we know happened for thousands of years, and how do we recapture that in light of what we've learned through conventional agriculture, monoculture, pesticides,
Hmm.
herbicides, neonicotinoids, and all the ways of killing things. That if we can step away from that and figure out how we can grow things and help things live and have a diverse grassland, that there's so many benefits. I mean, the first thing is, we're rebuilding the food system
Hmm.
together,
Hmm.
but then all those other benefits that come along with it. By mimicking nature, you get nutrient density, you get wildlife habitat, you get improved water cycle. You've got photosynthesis happening, more green days in a year, not tilling, pulling carbon out of the air. You've got, and that's, to me, that's why that protocol of AGA is so important, because the benefits are many. And honestly, I mean, you can say that it's accessible to anybody, small, medium, large rancher, and that is true. Anybody can live by these rules if they want to,
Hmm.
if they choose to. But in the world of beef, where you're so much of the beef in this country is trading boxes of beef in transit, uh, where nobody really knows where that animal was raised in that environment, in the conventional beef market, the commodity beef market. And to
Hmm.
me, we want to know, you want to know how that the practices of actually raising that animal and then following it all the way through the supply chain to a consumer's mouth, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And the only way you can do that is to actually certify how that animal is being raised, how it's being grazed, how it's being treated, what it has been or has not been treated with. And
Hmm.
I think, those of us that are close to this industry kind of take for granted that, yeah, of course you're going to know that animal, but when you step back and look at the bigger beef industry, that's not the way it operates.
Yeah. Well, you and
Cattle
I
are put
both
on a
know.
truck and boxes are put on
Yeah.
a truck, and we really don't know how that was raised. And I guess I don't know if it's too big of a leap to say that you don't really know that about imported beef either, how it was
Well,
treated.
you don't know, and that's one of the reasons we fought with some wonderful other organizations to get product of the USA. It's not mandatory country of origin labeling, but product of the USA, because there was a huge loophole that if beef brought into this country was repackaged in any way, that means taking out of one plastic bag and putting in another, and then you could say it was product of the USA. And we fought that one tooth and nail. And in one of President Biden's executive orders, um, that was added in there. It had to be born, raised, harvested, and processed here, and that was the
So that's
loophole
being
before.
enforced now, that
No,
it's not being enforced, because that
the
I just want to make sure everyone understands that you can see a product on the shelf that says product of the USA, and the only part of that USA that it's a part that it participated in, or that it landed in, was that box of beef came across the ocean, went to a U.S. processing plant, was probably put in a different box, and then shipped back out. And I've
Mhm.
witnessed this with my own eyes in processing facilities. I've seen the product coming in from whatever country, let's call Australia out. Okay, here's an Australian box of beef, and it goes out the loading dock as a product of USA after they've changed the box.
Well, the USDA gave everybody till the end of 2025 to start implementing this. So we're sitting on pins and needles to say that it will be implemented at the end of 2025. As you know, uh, things change, but we're gonna try and hold everybody's feet to the fire and say you've got to stop this, especially with this buy local, be local, America first, all that stuff right now. That we think that this is really important to keep in place, and these American family farms and farmers don't need to be competing with the egregious mislabeling of what's going on now.
Yeah, and I'm a free market guy. I'll compete, and with anybody. but let's not be misleading and mislabeling the product.
Hmm.
Like let the
Yeah.
consumer decide. It's like, do you want to buy Australian grass-fed beef? God bless you. Hopefully,
Hmm.
hopefully there's no thumb on the scale any which way that favors that. That, but let's not mislead. Let's just say
Yeah.
what it is. Here's what's in the package. Here's where it was raised. Here's where it was grazed. Here's where it was processed. Here's where it was shipped, and just leave it at that. Um,
Yeah.
and then we probably should have a level playing field on tariffs. If there's going to be a tariff of beef exporting to a country, then that same tariff, I believe, should be on that same country's beef coming into our country. Um, Personally, I don't believe in walls of stopping product from flowing, but I do I do think it's terrible to mislead consumers. And I'm not sure how that does look out after American farmers and ranchers by misleading consumers about what country the product came from.
Well, I said something probably 10 years ago or maybe 8 years ago now. And I said, it's like the Beyonce song says, if you like it, put a ring on it. So just proper labeling, honest labeling. And that's what we've been fighting for all this time. And that's why we were so proud when we got the executive order saying that this would stop being, and then they backed it up till the end of 2025. So we're still holding our breath, but we'll see what happens. And I think that with the movement in this country right now to bring things closer to home, this should stay in place. And
It
we're
seems like it
working.
should. Yeah, it seems
Yeah,
like it should.
yeah.
So that gives us a current state of the affairs. We're going to have to check in again after the end of 2025 and see where
Mhm.
we're at.
Yeah.
But now, can you share a little bit about what fuels your energy to stay involved in this space and why you feel it's so important from a broader societal or food system perspective?
Oh, Matt, it would take 3 days and a pot of coffee to tell you all the reasons that from the time that my great great grandfather or great 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 grandfather came to the United States on a cattle boat from Spain. And we call people like me an imprinted farmer, even though we don't sometimes live on the farm. But that runs deep in my blood and in my bones. And seeing these farmers that we now work with, working as hard as they can, and as you know, following the rules, following the guidelines, following all the regulations that you have to follow to put beef on the shelf in the United States, and helping farmers reach that point to see operations. And I'll give you a thousand hills of plug. When I walked your pastures and saw how you were bringing teeming life and the microbes and the birds and all the other species that are living there. The Audubon guys were there one day that I was there and watching the birds and everything. And that's what we want America to look like. Rural America needs to look like that. And that makes me wake up every day and say, we can make a difference about this. We can take the American soils and the American farms and the American land and the areas that can't do arable crops or are not built on and turn them into productive food systems and not have to rely on other countries to feed us. So
Yeah,
that
you know,
that's that's a little deep, but we need to be able to feed ourselves.
I agree. Feeding ourselves that whole what do we want our our land to look like? That's so huge. It's what does it look like? Are we preserving it? Are we killing it? Are we regenerating it? I just drove the other day from Oklahoma to Minnesota, and I was pretty encouraged in Oklahoma. I could see animals on the land. I could see managed grazing. I didn't see a lot of monoculture cropping. I didn't see irrigating. I just saw grasslands. It was so refreshing. And then as you drive closer to the Corn Belt, it changes pretty dramatically to you don't see animals. You see large equipment, tilling, dust in the air, carbon in the air, irrigation. and you know what's coming. You know, it's spring, it's early spring now, and you know what's coming and what's going to be planted, and um, how's that helping our food system? How's it hurting our food system? And so for, I don't know, 500 miles, I was witnessing a pretty monoculture landscape. And
Hmm.
that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Brown, tilled up dirt.
Well, the one thing that we do focus on, and we work closely as we can with other organizations who are helping us make markets and access to markets rather than just having a system that takes all the animals off the land, sends them to feed yards, and that's your only market. So we work with other organizations that are really good at this and working with the government to develop different food systems. So it's not a one size fits all type thing. Like the things that you all are doing and other producers in the United States are doing is having an additional market so you don't have to send those animals to a feed yard, and you can work with your local communities and as far as and online and that kind of things, and the retail and the honesty around what you do. In Canada, I I'm I see people in our generation whose kids are coming back to the farm, and it's completely different from what I was told to do, was leave the farm, and it's to see young people who really want to farm, and then see farmers who are what I call non-imprinted farmers who want to farm. They don't have any skin in the game. They just want to come back to the land. And every time I run into one of those, I want to give them a gold star and say, good for you. How can I help you? Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. I mean, we have such a parallel in our generation, but you and I personally, I mean, no one had to tell me to leave the farm. I just knew that I didn't want to argue about what bills were going to get paid that week around the dinner table and have no money and work 16 hours a day. And we ate good. We had a good meal 3 times a day, but I knew I wanted something else. That I didn't want to replicate that. And so yeah, our whole generation basically left the farm. And fortunately, we're two people that 20 years later the light bulb went off, and we were like, no, we need to go back to the farm. It's that important. And there's that many benefits if we can do this right to our whole society and our whole food system. But I agree. The hope is in these people, that the younger generation that I would say is much more enlightened than I ever was at that age, for sure. And coming back, I know it fills my heart that my kids are interested in, well, they're interested in food and where does it come from and what is good food and what is good practices. And they're asking those questions. That fills my heart. And I know it's not just my family, but going to conferences and seeing young people, like you say, that didn't grow up on a farm, are like asking questions. How can I get involved? What can I do? What can I do with five
Hmm.
acres? And start to stack those enterprises on those 5 acres and figure out what it is, what their skill level, what their interest is. That's our hope for the future, right? I mean, that's
Hmm.
that's it. We
Yeah.
need that type of person back on the land and wanting that lifestyle. And it isn't, it's not a great financial rewarding undertaking, but the impact is so big, so huge for every person that's deciding to do that. It's just
Well,
giant. And I just had a recent conversation where we were talking about how do we collectively elevate food and agriculture to a level in our society where it's more valued.
you know, we talk about getting rich farming, and it's the richness in your soul and in what you're doing and in your integrity and how you're relating to your family and your community and knowing each other. That's a richness that you can't get, and I don't discredit anybody for making a lot of money if they want to, but let's not discount the fact of that piece of your your being that needs a connection with the land, and that's what I see in these young farmers. And like I say, people who have had different careers and all of a sudden go, there's something lacking here. And I want to find out what it is. And they come to our conferences and they call us on the phone and say, how do I do this? And so we also have resources that we, you know, and the return of women to the farm. Of course, my family was matriarchal. My mother's father died when she was 3, so my grandmother and her sisters, and kept up with things, and so it's
Oh, I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah. So and it's she went back to school in the 20s and 30s and got a PhD in education. So it shows you how hard-headed we can be, Matt.
Well, there's no question about that. I didn't have doubts about that.
Well, anyway, like I say, enough about me. But again, I like to say when I see these kids, and I just when I'm out on the ranch, or at our little place, I'm the one in a pair of cutoffs, blue jeans, and a pair of Skechers, and these guys have silk scarves and boots and stuff, and I'm going, okay, but it's just a different generation, and I'm so pleased that they're adopting not only the lifestyle, but the heritage and all of the things that go along with it. And they're learning about their ecosystems, and they're learning how they fit in with it instead of just driving around it. And it's okay to get your hands dirty. It's
Yeah,
like
it's so
farm
great to
kids.
be connected to the land. It's hard to
Yeah.
describe if you haven't been. It's hard to
Hmm.
describe that, but for those of us that have been, and the drawback is immense. It's in your blood, and it's hard to move. So let's quantify this movement a little bit.
Okay.
Off the top of your head, I'm going to ask for numbers. Given where you started in 2003, and then the first certifications in 2007, what's happened on number of farms, or however you want to quantify it, acreage, animals? Is there a trend
Yeah.
towards regenerative, or what are you
Hmm.
seeing?
Yeah. We want it to be a slow moving trend. We don't want rapid growth, because that's not the way the animals grow. And that's not the way this movement should grow. We don't, there's a lot of interest right now in regenerative, and making sure that the soils and the land is included in the raising of these animals, not just I want to raise cattle. Well, you have to make sure that your soils are healthy enough. And we get calls all the time where people say, "What kind of cattle should I put on my land?" Well, tell me about your land, and then we'll talk about types of cattle or number of cattle and those kind of things. And there's a lot of resources out there with in agriculture. And people like you, we have people call you and other farmers to say, here are the resources that you can do. Right now we have, and I'm not on the day-to-day basis of handling that, but I think we have about 800 producers in the program, and
Okay.
they're coming in every day. And it's not just cattle; it's bison. Goat is growing. Lamb is growing. Um, dairy is Grass-fed dairy is growing. We've got 2 major labels that are using our seal on their dairies, and that's really important because a lot of these small dairies are either Amish or other religious sects, and some of them are still hand milking, but we're keeping them getting a premium for their milk. We've just added poultry, and that's another thing where people say, I'm not going to eat meat anymore. I'm going to eat chicken. Well, pastured chicken is, and we have standards for that now because the mislabeling on that is egregious as well. So we're working with the government on that one. So, but
So roughly
it's
800 farms, multi-species, and you're seeing interest in carrying on beyond beef and other species. Um, and the trend is it picking up steam? Is it a steady line? How are the inquiries coming in?
well, we like to have it be a steady, slow, not slow, but steady progression. Because when you get those fluctuations of bandwagons, um, you see people fall by the wayside. And we want to make sure that anybody that is interested in doing this can succeed. And we know some people aren't going to be able to succeed. But rather than saying you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to, make it work now, it's 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 a journey, not a destination. So, and then helping these folks find markets, and understanding that's one of the barriers to finding markets is processing. And we got some help from the government a few years ago on helping build some processing plants, but that's going to be something that's going to be critical moving forward is more ability to process those animals that are coming off of
especially
these.
those
Oh,
other,
yeah.
sorry, those other species, like lamb and hogs, and the processing for that has really gone away, at least in our region. You have to go hundreds of miles to get to a processing facility for some of the non-beef species.
Yeah. There,
So yeah,
there.
that infrastructure, and then the consolidation that's happened within beef and within protein in general, that consolidation into bigger and bigger plants and further away from rural communities or affecting fewer rural communities. I think that's part of that landscape that you talked about earlier. Like, how do we reinvigorate through smaller multi-species farms and communities where where your food came and came from, and the people that and their practices. I mean, to
Mhm,
me, that's core to AGA, because you're really not for the very, very big, because they don't even know the producers that are raising the animals. They can't certify
mhm,
them.
yeah.
And that's what I love about it, is like that there's that level of boots on the ground where you do know, and
Yep.
there's a difference there. And I want people to know that there is a difference when you're certified with any number of credible certifications. But of course, I love American Grassfed Association, and I love the protocol. I still haven't found one that's more rigorous, that really takes into consideration the non-confinement and non-GMO and diverse grasslands and all of that. So all of that. I mean, I guess, it's like diversity is good no matter what. Diversity is good on a farm. Diversity is good on the grassland. Diversity is good in the community. Diversity is good in our food system, so that, in our diet, we're getting what we need. And I think that's core to AGA.
Mhm. Well, people say, well, grass-fed or pasture-based products are more expensive, but not really, because that $10 you give that farmer that you're buying from directly is keeping that school open in that rural town. It's keeping that church viable. It's keeping all those little stores, mom and pops, open, and rather than consolidating it to send it somewhere else so they can sell it cheaper, doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I don't uh, cheap food. Who likes that? I mean, we all look for quality and quality. We should look for quality, not quantity. And if you
Yeah,
look at
for
the
sure.
prices, if you look at the prices in the grocery store, um, if you see, I don't know, I'm one of those people that uh, I'll spend more for food, because it's important for my health. It's important for the health of the planet. It's important for the farmers that are growing it, and that's why we're so bent on changing these labels. Because the little red barn on the front of the package, in a lot of cases, there's no little red barn. So
That's
yeah,
for sure. Yeah, you
yeah,
can't believe the pictures always. Yeah, that's for
and
sure. Well,
the
yeah,
other
and
th-
just
the
on the whole idea of cheap food, that if all you did was discount the environmental benefits, the animal welfare benefits, the rural economy, just discount all of that and say nutrition,
Mhm.
there there's easily, it's being quantified now, the level of nutrition that's in, let's say, any species that has access to a diverse grassland or pasture versus fed in confinement. There's
Mhm.
a real difference in nutrition, and then
Mhm.
hence your health. So even if that was it right there, to me, that's enough. And
Yeah.
that the cheapest food is not going to give you those benefits.
Well, and the nutritional analysis, I mean, a very dear friend of mine who's a professor at the University of Kentucky said, you hear all the different conflicting studies and support. And he said, the, the figures tortured long enough will admit to anything. But if you look at the real science behind what's going on, and you know deep in your soul that things that are raised correctly are going to be better for the whole ecosystem and the animals and the farmers and everybody else, then I think that informed consumers and people who are learning, and it warms my heart to walk in the grocery store and see people reading labels. It really does.
Yep. Pay attention. Yep.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
There's one grocer that I swear they have a picture of me in the back of their meat market. I said, don't talk to her because I ask so many questions.
I normally wrap up by talking about hope for the future, but you've already identified that through the people and people coming back to the land, the younger generation. So I'm going to
Mhm.
shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to share with us, what is it that you believe is consumers can do. So on that whole idea about reading the nutrition labels or whatever it is. So as we talk to consumers, what can they do when they walk into a store or they're buying from their farmer? What role can a consumer play in regenerating our food system?
Well, the first thing they can do, of course, is reading labels. And if you're not familiar with reading labels, they say talk to the meat manager or the meat guy behind the meat counter. Well, that's the first start, but you have to understand that they're only parroting what they've been told. And the other thing is too, if you go to the farmer's market and you ask whoever's standing at the stand, did you raise this animal? Where is this coming from? There's farmers markets that now require certification for selling those products in the farmer's market. The main, and then if everything else fails, um, call us. Like I say, if we don't know the answer, at least we'll be honest and say, I don't know the answer. But that's important and there are some larger commodity growers who are now have showcase farms where they have like petting zoo farms and that kind of thing, where they showcase these wonderful animals. And then it's kind of like the, the wizard behind the curtain in Wizard of Oz. That's not exactly what they're doing. And consumers a lot of times don't know what they're looking for. And so when they go to a farm, they say, oh, this looks good, but learn what you need to be looking for when you go to that farm.
What was the diet
Yeah.
of that animal?
That,
Okay, how it was
mm-hmm,
raised, all that, from a welfare standpoint. But I think point
mm-hmm,
blank, what was the lifetime diet of that animal? Was it pastured? Was it grasses? Was there grains? Was there GMO grains? Like, I want to know the diet. I want to know, we are what our food eats.
yeah,
So what did my food eat? Right? I
yeah,
mean, because you can tell
yeah,
a lot if someone just tells you the diet of that animal or chicken or whatever it is. Is that not correct?
absolutely. The other thing right now that is something that we find is that the term grass finished does not have a legal definition. And what we're seeing, and not in all cases, but we're seeing where animals are being taken out of confinement and finished on grass, and that's being allowed on the label. So it's either grass fed or it's not, like it's sugar free or it's not, or it's real or it's not. And it's people say grass fed and grass finished because they've been told that all animals are grass fed, but they forget the caveat until it's not. So look for and I'm going to plug myself, my organization, look for the seal because those farms have been inspected. They've had somebody on the ground. If there's any question, we we follow up. Those farms are inspected at least every 15 months. And the reason we do it every 15 months instead of every year is you can see the farms at different cycles, different times of the year, and that kind of thing. So it's important. Yeah.
It is important. I don't think you should be shy about saying, look for the seal. I mean, it could be your seal, could be another one, but just know what that seal stands for and then
Yeah.
look for it, because the label itself, there's not a lot of regulation around, or at least tight regulation around what is claimed on the label itself. But if it's certified, now there's practices that have been certified.
Yeah.
So, there's a reason why you see some packages that have seals on them that look like a NASCAR, and then there's other ones that don't. Well, there's the purveyor of the brand that looks like a NASCAR is trying to communicate something to you about what their practices are and what's important to them. So see if those values align with yours by, it's going to take a little research, but not everything is right face value on that label. There's only so much real estate. There's only so much you can say, and some of that is misleading, and you just got to know that.
Yeah. Well, I can see, and I agree with you totally. I mean, if you went through all the certifications that are out there, put it all on your label would be about an 8 by 10 piece of paper just for the label without any nutritional analysis type thing. But it's important for the consumer to know your farmer, know your food, but you got to know what you're looking for when you go to your farmer. And I hearken back to the little red barn that's on a lot of packages now, and uh, you know, it's in endorsements and that kind of things are important because it helps get your product sold. But I'd rather talk to the farmer and
Like
or
I
the farm.
like the shots of the chicken that's sitting in grass and is scared to death because it's never seen grass before and it doesn't want to move. But there's a barn in the background and there's a chicken plopped in the grass, and you're like, "Whoa,
Yeah,
that thing is
yeah,
nervous. It has no idea what it should do next."
yeah, yeah. But it's a journey, and the consumer is waking up with everything that's going on right now with the world and all of this stuff right now. We want to be important to you, and we want you to understand that this is important for us as a nation to keep our farmers, because a nation that can't feed itself, is it's hard, and that's something that we can do, and we just have to make sure that everybody works together to make sure that continues to happen. And,
Well, that's a perfect summary. Couldn't have said it better myself. That this nation is fully capable of feeding itself. We do need to rebuild our food system so we can continue to feed ourselves and feed ourselves better, more nutritious food. But that's also very enjoyable journey to be able to learn and understand and produce food that nourishes us, nourishes our soul, nourishes our bodies, nourishes our communities. Carrie, thank you for being such an advocate for all those very important facets of life. You should be very proud of your accomplishments and your work. And I'll always hold you in high esteem because you work on things that I never could. And I appreciate that you do.
well, you make my journey worthwhile. How's that?
It was good. Great
All right.
deal. Win-win.
Okay. Win-win. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie. Thanks for joining us. Look forward to seeing you soon.